Good afternoon and welcome to the Children's Cardiomyopathy Foundation's special edition webinar, Her Strength, Their Hope, celebrating Heart Moms in honor of Mother's Day. My name is Leah Mum and I am the Director of Family and Physician Relations for CCF. We would like to take a moment to recognize our corporate sponsors noted on the slide for their generous and ongoing support of our webinar program and work at CCF. CCF's free educational webinars and all of CCF's resources for parents, families, and healthcare providers are made available thanks to our generous donors like you. The month of May marks CCF's annual Spring Appeal. Honor your mother or a caregiver in your life by making a donation to support CCF today. Click the link in the chat or scan the QR code on your screen to make your donation. During today's webinar, questions are encouraged and welcomed. Questions may be submitted via the question box located in the control panel on your screen throughout the presentation. We will reserve the last 10 minutes for questions. The webinar will be recorded and will be available on the CCF website and YouTube channel in the coming days. We are thrilled to welcome three very special CCF Heart Moms who will answer questions about their unique journeys raising children with pediatric cardiomyopathy. Melissa is a mom of a teenage son, Dylan. Dylan was diagnosed with cardiomyopathy as a newborn. At 8 months of age, Dylan received a heart transplant. Today, Dylan is a healthy, strong teen getting ready for his summer wrestling camp. Melissa is the Executive Director of Transplant Families, supporting parents and caregivers of children undergoing or living with organ transplants through education, resources, and community. Outside of work, she enjoys hiking and traveling with her husband, Brandon. Welcome, Melissa. Next, we welcome Pragna. Pragna is a mom of a teen daughter. Jaya was diagnosed with dilated cardiomyopathy shortly after birth following a severe case of Coxsackie virus, which caused Jaya to go into multiple organ failure. Today, a high school senior, Jaya is planning to attend UC Berkeley next year and hopes to publish a children's book on cardiomyopathy in the future. Pragna is a speech-language pathologist. She has been in practice for over 25 years and serves the birth to 3 years of age population. Welcome, Pragna. Finally, we are pleased to welcome Renee. Renee is the mom of 2 teen boys and a rescue dog. Her youngest son, Benjamin, was diagnosed with dilated cardiomyopathy at 1 month of age. Today, Ben's heart is pumping strong and he's trying out for his school's tennis team. Renee is the Senior Executive Director of the Manufacturing Extension Partnership at Purdue University. She also serves as a Child Life Volunteer and a Patient and Family Advisory Council member at Riley Children's Hospital. Renee has also served CCF as a parent ambassador for many years, providing support to other parents of children with cardiomyopathy. Welcome, Renee. We will now direct a series of questions to our Heart Moms. Our first question is for Pragna and Renee. What resources have you found to be most helpful in educating yourself about your child's diagnosis? And what resources would you recommend other parents explore to help understand their child's diagnosis?
Thank you, Leah. Initially, when we received this diagnosis, this was about almost 18 years ago, our doctor was our primary resource. He was wonderful. He answered all of our questions. We listened to him and he guided us. Google, which has its pros and cons, but we used online resources. I didn't discover CCF for about 10 years. I think those first 10 years, just going through the motions of everything, couldn't process what was happening enough to even reach out for resources. Kind of numb those first 10 years. It was until about 10 years later when I discovered Children's Cardiomyopathy Foundation, and that was a wealth of information in terms of what the diagnosis looks like, to hear other families' journeys, to hear other children's journeys. And I still rely on all three. I still rely on our doctors, CCF, and online, constantly educating ourselves on this diagnosis.
I'll just add to that. So we were very fortunate in that our pediatric cardiologist referred us to CCF very early on, which was a lifesaver because as Pragna mentioned, we turned to Google at one point, and that's again pros and cons, but you can certainly go down a bit of a spiral when you just don't have the medical knowledge yourself and you're relying on Google for data. So we utilize the resources that CCF provides in terms of educational pamphlets and brochures. That was very helpful. Obviously, our cardiologist was first and foremost a source of information for us. And I think it's important to note we actually started with a different pediatric cardiologist and just we didn't have a connection to him. And I was almost scared to ask questions like, gosh, is this going to be a dumb question? And we went to get a second opinion. And the second we connected with that doctor, I was like, I feel comfortable, I feel confident, and I don't feel like going to him with a question will ever be met with, oh gosh, that's a stupid question. So I think that's something that's really, really important in forming that relationship with your cardiologist, to use them as a trusted resource.
Thank you both so much. Our next question is also for both Pragna and Renee. What tips do you have for explaining your child's diagnosis to their siblings or other young family members?
So Jaya has a brother who's 3 years older. And so when she was diagnosed at birth, he was only 3. He's going to be 21 soon. Over the years, we've done it in layers, and that's worked best for us. When we first brought her home, he knew something was up. I was in the NICU for, almost a month and a half. He didn't see me very often. When we brought her home, he sensed our anxiety, our panic. We tried to, those early years, just say we're going to give her lots of extra love. And that's all he could process right now at that point. As he got a little bit older, he understood a little bit like, okay, we're taking a little extra care of her, a lot of doctor's appointments, but really didn't go into anything more than that. We kind of followed his lead a little. Closer to middle school, we opened it up to him, followed his lead and kind of said, do you have any questions? He was noticing, we go to these appointments often. She's on meds, around the clock. So gently kind of used him as a cue to what he can absorb. The one thing that as we did provide information, was always kind of ended it with an action plan. So he's not left with this information and doesn't have any way to process that. It was always like, her heart is sick. We're gonna, we're taking extra care, but we go to these doctor's appointments so that we can keep her as healthy as she can be. So there was some sort of action plan that we're taking, so that he wasn't left with this information and not knowing what to do with it. As he got older, as a teen, he understood a little bit more. He's in the biomed pathway as well. So he understood the cardiovascular system a lot more, which also has its pros and cons, because when you now understand it, you know the dark side of it too, of this disease. So that was a little scary for him. It was at that time I also decided to open up about myself needing to see a counselor and to receive mental health services, so that if they ever felt like it was scary for them or information that they just needed to process, it was open to them to also reach out to someone outside of a family member that they can talk to. So that's a little bit later in their teen years, we decided to bring that up. As a teen, he was very sweet. He would then accompany her to MRI appointments, or afterwards I'd say, listen, she really has to stay hydrated. Once he got his license, he'd go and get her Gatorade or her favorite drinks, because she'd have to stay hydrated. And so he would do little things that were just very sweet because he understood it better. They're going to both be at Berkeley together next year, which warms my heart because I think she'll have Big Brother there. And he's a very loving, caring big brother. And wherever this journey takes us, I think just doing it in layers, gently letting them absorb this, I think is the way that worked for our family.
So our situation was very similar. Brady, which is Benjamin's older brother, was almost 4 when he was born. So again, not at an age where he could really comprehend. I think Pragna really hit the nail on the head and approaching it as layers, right? And letting the sibling kind of guide when they're ready to take that information. You know, when they start asking questions, you know, providing answers that can make sense to them. You know, but they notice the extra appointments. They notice, oh, you're sick, you can't be anywhere, you know, around your sibling because he can't get it. So very early on, we told Brady that Ben had a special heart because we didn't want it to come across as a sick heart. We wanted, he has a special heart. Um, and that helped some. But then for a while, Brady was getting echocardiograms to be safe, to make sure he wasn't developing the same condition. So there'd be some tough conversations then when he started to get a little bit older. Well, you know, am I going to have a special heart too? But it's, well, we're doing preventative appointments to ensure if that were to happen, you know, we're ahead of it. And the only difference, I guess, with Pragna is Brady has never given Ben any special treatment whatsoever. Maybe that's just the brother dynamic, but he beats him up and doesn't let him win basketball or anything like that because it's always just been, you know, it's just kind of how it's been, and it's never really changed their relationship. I will say though, Brady, who is a senior in high school, he'll be heading off to college in the fall. He did join the Riley Dance Marathon, which Riley is our local children's hospital where Ben is seen by his cardiologist. So he joined that to fundraise in honor of Ben for the Children's Hospital. And in this past year as a senior, he held a leadership role and actually took on hosting the Riley families that were at the event and taking that opportunity to talk about his own family's journey with Riley. So there is a sweet side in there a little bit. He just doesn't let his brother see it too often.
Thank you both so much. Our next question is for Melissa. What advice do you have for other parents whose child has been recommended for a heart transplant?
This is such a hard situation, and I apologize for anyone that's in it. I know it's not fun because we've obviously been there. Find your community would be my first big piece of advice. And if that's CCF, there's many families there that their children have had heart transplants, and they are very kind and open and willing to be there. You can also come to transplant families. We have a large community too. So we've got lots of links to our groups that you can be a part of, talk to other people, lean on them. Secondly, work with your team. And I want to reiterate what Renee said because it was so important. If you are at all uncomfortable, get a second opinion. That's so important. Any doctor would do this for his own family. So it's not inappropriate for you to do it for yours. You just want to cover all your bases. It's completely appropriate. And if you feel that you need to do that, that you're uncertain at all, please do that. It'll settle your own mind about what the diagnosis is and the treatment plan going forward. Third, visit SRTR. They're the Scientific Registry for Transplant Recipients, and it's srtr.org. They have a whole site dedicated to the centers that you might have your child go to for transplant. So you can see what their ratings are for the past 3 years. You can go see what types of conditions that led them to transplant, how they do in those, all kinds of demographic information, but it gives you a really clear picture of the centers that you might have to choose between. And finally, Center of Excellence will always be something we have to work around with insurance. Insurance have certain centers are willing to work with. And so I would take the centers that they recommend, run them by SRTR, talk to your medical team. All of this is just one grand group working together to make the impossible happen, which is the miracle of life. And it's just amazing to see how these groups come together in this circumstance to save a child's life. So those are my best pieces of advice for transplant.
Thanks so much, Melissa. Our next question is for all three moms. What have you found to be the most helpful strategy for communicating your child's diagnosis and restrictions to others, including school staff, coaches, extracurricular activity leaders, or other parents when your child heads off to a play date or a sleepover? We'll start with Melissa.
Yeah, absolutely. I lean on the Children's Cardiomyopathy Foundation documents all the time, to the point where I've given it to liver groups and kidney groups and everyone else. I think they're amazing. They have this great set of documents that talks about 504s, IEPs, and that's the great foundation of which you can kind of get kind of go through their worksheet, plug in your child's information, and take that to your school. Once the school has it, you can ask for, a special meeting with the teachers. That's really helpful. So they know what to do in case of emergency. They know any accommodations they might need to take. Some of these medications are hard on our kids in different ways, in mentally, physically. So that spells out what is okay and what's not. And then you can always ask your medical team for a letter as well, and they can give that to the school. Sometimes with other groups, like, if you're going to sports or maybe church, you're going to Sunday school, and they might like, oh my gosh, I don't need this huge document you might need for a school. Maybe just have a one-page document of my child has cardiomyopathy or my child has a transplant. And these are like the quick 5 things you need to know, like in case of emergency, contact me. And then go through the different questions that you might, or solutions that you might want them to have in case of emergency. So that was my best piece of advice, thanks to CCF.
Okay, we'll have Pragna answer.
Similar to Melissa, I did rely on the CCF material, but like I said, I didn't discover them until about 10 years into this journey. So those first 10 years for preschool, play dates, things like that, I made that one sheet paper just by Googling and just kind of helping the teachers understand. We also chose extracurriculars that were a little bit more neighborhood small base, so that we would have constant dialogue and rapport building with the instructors, constant communication. Those first, I would say, until middle school, I did all the behind the scenes communication. My daughter really wasn't in a position to absorb this information yet. So it was all behind the scenes on mom's part. Closer to middle school, we kind of brought up, oh, listen, we're going to have a health plan, and your teachers will know about this, and gently bringing up the information to her, and also that we're going to make it aware to the schools. We set up a health plan, so she, kind of had an idea of what was going to happen. Getting a medical ID bracelet and a necklace was very helpful, so she has that all the time. Played it, or once drop-off birthday parties started happening, I stayed close by. I always gave the moms a heads up. However, I always stayed nearby just in case. Like, that was just the mama heart that couldn't really fully drop off at that point. She's in high school now, and a close knit of friends. And they know she was able to communicate to her closest friends. So that makes me feel better too, that like they're all, they're a great group of friends, and they're aware. And I think, knowledge is power in that sense. So communication with all parties.
I would certainly echo that communication is very important. I don't want to reiterate everything that Melissa and Pragna have said, but I would add one of the things that was really important is empowering Ben to speak up. I always told him, you know your body the best. You know if something is off. So, speak up. If you're not feeling well at school or if you're at a friend's house, you don't have to get into the whole story, just make sure that as soon as you're not feeling well, to reach out. And he's a very good kid. He is not taking advantage of that where he's trying to get out of a test or anything and saying he doesn't feel too well. The other thing that I would add is we try, it's not always ideal, but we try and really stay with our core group of our pediatrician and our cardiologist. And I'll give one example. We all know how insurance is with your annual checkups and getting a physical on file to play any sport with the school. And our time hadn't been a full year, and we needed a sports physical, so we went to like a minute clinic, and it was a total disaster. When someone that's not familiar with him and they see what you're walking in with, not just that, if you're going into a clinic or emergency rooms have been fine. We haven't had that, but we try and stay away from those situations if we can, and just keep it to the practitioners and physicians that really know him well and are comfortable and confident in his care and where he is in his journey with cardiomyopathy.
Thank you. Our next question is for Melissa and Pragna. How have you and your family been planning for your child to head off to college?
Oh boy, it's so hard. I see Pragna, she has the same reaction that I have. So you bring these kids up, you are there with them, this whole time. You kind of at some point during their teen years have to take off the mom cap and be the coach instead, and let them have a few stumbles and kind of discover life on their own. Obviously ask a lot of questions during that teen period about transition, what it looks like, what are the milestones that need to be hit of both your cardiac team and your pediatrician as well. They know kind of what are normal for them. And it's going to be a little different for, sometimes our heart kids than it would be for others. But mostly having your child take ownership of their care. I think Renee brought it up too. So you want them to draw their own meds and to take responsibility for taking them in the morning. And if you miss it, or if they miss it, then you're there, and you can correct them during those years. But as much as they can, even if it's awkward, have them try to call and make their own appointments. Have them, we just practice going through at the beginning of the year when all the insurance restarts and you have to call and get all the copay cards back on for your medications. We practice going through that. I'm like, it's a pain, but here's how you do it. And so we went through that whole process. I would definitely say look to CCF for documents on this. They've got a lot of great transition documents. Transplantfamilies.org. We also, if you're in that area for transplant, we have documents too. And we have a ton of webinars, as does CCF, on our YouTube channels about transition. But also check out gottransition.org. And they have kind of a pathway for parents and a pathway for your teen of a checklist of what to do, because it's scary when they go off to college and you won't be there and they have to take their medications in the morning. Are they doing it? Are they getting their labs? But there's so many tips and tricks out there. Like there's a lab company that will come to your child's dorm if you need it. There are ways that you can have dispensers that will automatically give you individualized pill packs so you can make sure that they're taking their medicines on a consistent basis, and then make them aware of all, if they're going away to school, the local transplant or cardiology clinics that they might need to get in contact with in case of emergency, and have them have a few lifeline buddies as well. But if we've been all doing our job, which I know we have during the teen years, they do pick it up. It's scary when you're like, how am I going to know if they do this when they can't turn their homework? How are they going to take their meds? But they do figure it out. It's an amazing process to watch. And with that, I will pass it to Pragna.
Thank you. with this transition, I think trying to control what we can has been kind of the way we've been trying to prepare for it. It's definitely anxiety provoking knowing that we're going to be on the sidelines now. Some of the things we started doing in the last few years was, like Melissa said, just empowering her. So we order our meds through our online portal. We got her comfortable with that, got her comfortable how to order her own meds, fill her own pill box. She's been doing it for the last few years. Every checkup, the doctor pretty much quizzes her again. She needs to be aware of the meds, the dosages, the side effects. So those are things the last few years to prepare for this transition. She's been doing. I started having her email her doctors. Normally I do that, but in preparation for this transition, I need her to feel comfortable connecting with her doc. We've had the same cardiologist for 18 years. We've been blessed with the same doctor. That we have a very close relationship with him. So getting her to now take charge of connecting with her doctors. So that's been something she's been doing. And also, like, she does a Holter monitor, a Zeo patch every 3 months. Generally, I used to help put it on. I put it in the mail, but now that's her turn. So we've been having her do that, put it on, you go mail it off. That's what you'll be doing in college. So just gentle preparations for this transition. We've been in contact with the Housing Association at Berkeley. We requested the dorm closest to the health facility. We mapped it out together. We went and toured, figured out which dorm would be the closest. Most likely, we'll probably also recommend or request a single dorm just so she can manage her meds and rest as needed without roommate disruption. So that's been kind of in the talks. And for us, it's going to be anxiety provoking, but I think the better we prepare them, the better they'll be empowered and they can handle this journey. Like Melissa, we've been training them for the last few years. They've got this.
Thank you both so much. Our next question is for Melissa and Renee. How did you begin the discussion of sports participation with your child's doctor and care team?
Oh boy, this was crazy to start with because you struggle so much, especially with a lot of our kids that may be diagnosed when they're younger, and you have early intervention, and you're just struggling to get them to crawl and walk and do basic things. I think that fight in them from the very beginning gives them a lot of fight later on, and they want to go do extra things, which is great. But yeah, I'll lean back on something else Renee said. When they first start getting going and they want to come in, and you got to go get those sports physicals. And so you will start, definitely great advice to start with your cardiology team and your pediatrician team, because I remember taking my son in and they saw cardiomyopathy and they were like, red flag, no way, it's not happening. So we did, and we went to our team, got the letters. He started out with cross country, just simple sports like that. And it wasn't long. I think it was like 2nd or 3rd grade where he decided he wanted to wrestle. And I'm like, oh, that's a combat sport. I don't think that's allowed. So I went to his transplant team and I said, hey, he wants to wrestle. And they're like, you know what? Let him. We did all this so he can have a normal life. So if the team is okay with them doing sports that you might not think, go have that conversation with them. It doesn't hurt. They might say no. They'll give you reasons why if they do. But for Dylan, they said yes. I was kind of hoping they would say no, but they said yes. And so I wanted to know, is it safe? What are the extra precautions we need to take? So we went to the team because I know they have a lot of skin things that might happen from the mat. They bleached that mat every day for him. And as a result, all the other kids got that kind of clean environment that I didn't know was possible. And then he got in there, he was properly trained. So there weren't as many injuries. Everybody's different, of course. So you'll just kind of have to take it step by step. But know that every team's their opinions are changing a little bit about when it comes to exercise and sports, because they want our kids, if they can, to exercise and have the best circulation and health that they can, so that they can get better. It may help them. So that was very important in our journey. He's been doing great. He made state the last couple of years in wrestling. He also does swim. He's also done football. I didn't think any of those things were possible. He played football for the state champ this year. We went to that high school, and so it was great. He did get a concussion, so know that other things can happen. But what was great, if you're in a children's hospital network, if you do have an injury, you are in the best place possible for them to give you referrals. So we straight away got into the concussion clinic and added neurology to our multidisciplinary list. And they've been great. He's doing much better now and on target to go to wrestling camp this summer. So we're very excited at how all of these teams work together and communicate in what seems like a seamless manner. It's quite amazing. With that, I'll give it back to Pragna.
I think it's over to
It's
me
over
right
to you,
now.
Renee. I am so
Yeah,
sorry.
no, that's okay. I was just looking at the questions. So, fortunately for us, when we started having those conversations with our cardiologist, Ben was really little. It was like, hey, is there a possibility for him to play sports when he's older? So it wasn't ever, because I've talked to several other cardiomyopathy moms where their diagnosis came when their kid was 10, 12, 14, and they love soccer, and now that might be taken away from them, which is, so it's hard enough being a teenager, right? Let alone to lose something that you've been doing, you love. So we were fortunate in that we had those conversations early on. Our cardiologist was very supportive and just said, hey, I don't see any reason why we would need to limit his participation in sports. But, we'll just monitor him and see how he's doing. And fortunately, with how his heart is functioning right now, he doesn't have any limits. He was not interested in sports to begin with. We did kind of, baseball and some basketball. He tried soccer like his big brother, and he was just not feeling it. But now he's landed on tennis and found what he loves. So I'm fortunate it's not a contact sport. It is a little difficult though, because for him, a lot of the training is over the summer months when it gets hot. And that's one of the side effects we've noticed from the medication. He gets hot a little easier. So going back to that communication piece, just letting the coaches know that and letting him know, hey, it's okay to take an extra break if you need that to just cool down and have some extra water. But it is changing, as Melissa said, and trying to get these kids as active as we can to help, strengthen their cardiovascular health.
Thank you both so much. Our next question is for Melissa and Pragna, and I know you both touched on this a little bit in one of the previous questions, but maybe you can elaborate a little more on what have you found to be helpful in teaching your kids to advocate for themselves and their needs related to their cardiomyopathy or their diagnosis?
This is a great question. I have asked him about advocacy a lot. He sees I think they all see how us parents model and how we're great advocates, and we try to always be in front of it. Of course, at this time, in like their elementary school years, their teen years, they don't want to advocate. They just want to be normal. They want to be like their peers, until eventually they realize that advocacy is the path to just being normal. So recently, I'll give you an example. There was something that happened with a bill with a diagnostic test that Dylan utilizes called CareDx. And so they have a certain testing kit that they use to check for rejection. And I asked Dylan, I said, hey, we're working on this. This is how the process works. You write a bill, you get it through, because there was a group that didn't want to cover it. And so he's like, yeah, this is important. I would rather have this blood test than an invasive biopsy. And I'm like, yeah, you hate biopsies. Of course. I'm like, do you want to use your voice to make this happen? He did. He spoke on behalf of the team. It was something he believed in. And as a result, him and many, many others, we were able to get this pushed through. So now that test is covered for every child. but you can advocate on a much lesser level. Obviously, you can advocate with your school, with your teams, with your friends, but in your medical teams when you're going in for an appointment. It's just speaking up and empowering. When you frame it that way and say it's, don't think of it as like straight advocacy. It is empowering yourself and others, your community. Once you have that, they can take that and sprinkle it through the rest of their life. And that's where success grows, right? So I'm so proud of him and the way I've seen him grow and his advocacy spirit. It's been really empowering.
Similar to Melissa, I think in the younger years, not so much. I mean, and I think they just want to be kids and they want to play, and this is just something that gets in the way, and it's not really a part of them in their younger years. Closer to middle school for Jaya, anyways, it was the pandemic year, so she didn't really have to touch base on that. We were home. It really wasn't until high school, and she was older then. So then again, a lot more awareness of what this diagnosis means. She's older, she's able to handle that information. Advocacy, I wish I could say she just embraced it early on in her high school career. She didn't. I mean, we asked her many times, like, hey, let's do the cardiomyopathy walk or start a walk or a bake sale. They don't want to be different. They're teens. They don't want anything that they don't want to stand out. Even talking to her friends, it really wasn't until she developed really close friendships in high school that she gently was able to advocate to herself and kind of open up about her DCM. But the last few years, I think she's embraced it differently. She's kind of, understood it better and used that to kind of really empower her. Still doesn't want to do the CCF walks and stuff because, again, bringing attention to herself. She's a teen, and I get that. But what she did want to do was write a book about this and help other children. So she, I think, collected parent responses on the from CCF, and she wants to help other children maybe understand different cardiac procedures, because as she was going through these early on, there was really no one else to really connect with, to explain these procedures. And so I feel like that's her way of now figuring out, okay, well, how can I take my experiences and give back? So for her, it looks different in terms of advocacy. And they'll use this journey, and I hope that, in whatever way these children see fit, that they will pave it forward for other families and children.
Thank you both so much. Our next question is for all three moms. Has your child benefited from seeing specialists other than their pediatrician and cardiomyopathy team, such as nutritionists or physical therapists?
I'll start. Yes, especially when he was younger. It was vital that he start off, especially with nutrition. That's a really hard one because they don't want to eat. They're so sick. So we were trying to have him have the best chance, at life, especially if that road for you ends up being transplant. It's so important that they get that appropriate nutrition early on. It's brain development that's affected. There's so much that goes on holistically with your system. I would also strongly recommend early intervention services with your state. I believe that you can just Google it, early intervention for whatever state that you're in, and get connected with those. That's where, right after they're, again, been found to be sick, if they're declining, if they need help, they can get all of those services, physical therapy, occupational, speech. Sometimes it's a little bit more of a struggle for our kids to get started, but once they do, it's great. And those services make it just so much better for them. They need that boost, and it's so helpful to have that. So I would say definitely lean on any early intervention services that you might get to give them the best chance at starting off right when they do hit those elementary school years. Other than that, my final recommendation would be, if they are struggling, you see them struggling or shutting down, therapy. definitely connect with, your team. They might have recommendations. I know in a lot of states or children's hospitals, they have, a year-long wait. So ask them if you can go maybe outside the children's hospital, if that's the case in your area. If they need help now, they need help now. Sometimes that's telehealth. So whatever avenue that you can get that is a good connection for them, definitely find that. And if it's not, move on until you find the right connection, because that's so vitally important.
I'm going to piggyback on what Melissa just said. So I'm a pediatric speech language pathologist working with the birth to 3 population. So early intervention is absolutely crucial and necessary for some of our NICU babies. So like their first experiences right after birth should feel safe and regulated. They should be held and loved, right? Well, our kids aren't. They're poked and prodded and getting spinal taps, and they have tubes and beeping, and their sensory systems are so dysregulated. They're so dysregulated. So for Jaya, immediately, like at 5 months, I'm like calling my regional center going, I need PT, I need OT. And it brought them in home. She got PT, OT. I was the speech therapist. And then we also got her center base. So she had social play engagement with other kids 3 and under. Graduated at 3, and what you can change in those first 3 years really is crucial for their success later on. So really advocate for early intervention if you see any of these signs that your child may need. As she got older, we definitely talked about mental health counseling as well, because again, she knew no one that she could connect with. In terms of what she was going through. And she's also going through a biomed pathway in high school and talking about the cardiovascular system. One day they take a trip to UCLA, and that's where she gets her exercise stress test. Well, they don't sugarcoat anything at this field trip, and they basically start going over what it would be like if you were to be in heart failure, and she has a panic attack there. And thankfully, her teachers know and her close friends, but immediately they were there. So we talked about getting mental health services at that time. And as she's transitioning to college, possibly even talking to a nutritionist. At home, we can kind of make sure that they, for the most part, a well-balanced diet, but they're going to be on their own. And so I think talking to a nutritionist might be very helpful for her too. So we're looking into that.
Similar to what's already been mentioned, we also utilize some early intervention services. I won't go into detail with that since it's been covered pretty well. I think the main area that I would highlight that hasn't been mentioned is that we did see a geneticist. That was something that was really important to us early on, especially having a sibling. Our initial test, our first round of tests came back with nothing, but then the second one were able to identify the genetic marker and found out that his brother didn't have it. So that's been helpful. It is daunting, right? I mean, it is tough getting those results back, but it's all about the more that you know about your situation and helping your heart kiddo understand the situation. We've talked about mental health. He honestly, Ben does pretty well with it. He's also on the younger side. He will be entering high school next year. He will occasionally, ask me questions out of the blue. He was in a summer camp one time and they're talking about organ donation. And he came home and he said, would I even be able to do that with my heart condition? So I kind of see how often he brings it up. And if it starts to be more and more questions, then we'll sit down. I've been very open and honest about my own mental health struggles, and letting them know that it is okay to talk to someone, and it's, very healthy exercise. So we'll see what high school brings in that aspect for him.
Thank you all so much. We have one final question for all three of our moms. What are some important questions that you asked your child's doctor following their cardiomyopathy diagnosis?
I said, what are our options? That was the first question was, what is the prognosis? What are our options? What are we looking at? And thankfully they were super honest and, gave us a speech of 30% do better, 30% stay the same, and 30% get worse. We're not sure where your son is yet. And when, we find out, and later on when we did, they said, okay, he's definitely part of the third that are getting worse. Here are your options. Here's the research you can do. Keeping in touch with your team is vital. Having that trust and communication with them will help you go forward and ask many more questions. So that's what my main feedback is for that one.
I think following the diagnosis, it was similar to Melissa. What's the prognosis? What am I looking at? Like, you're numb with this diagnosis. The question I kept bawling in front of it was, am I going to outlive my child? Right? Like, what does this look like? And they don't have answers, right? Like you said, it's that 33, 30, 30. We're not quite sure where this will go, right? But we're going to do all the right things and monitor frequently, and we'll see how it goes together. So keeping in constant communication and with your doctors is crucial. I still, constantly feel like I need to ask them again, what's the prognosis? And again, 18 years later, right? But it's just one of those things where you do feel like this, you're at the mercy of this disease. Really, all we can do is control what we can control, and that's kind of how we're taking it. I feel like with this, we dream in chunks is kind of how I tell, people. I'm like, we don't really look too far. Okay, we got through preschool. Okay, what does it look like the next? Okay, we got through elementary. So as she's transitioning to college, I'm looking at that next chunk again, and kind of, just it's that same. Can I dream past this, like, for this next chunk? So constantly asking the doctors, but we're at the mercy of this disease, but we're doing all the things that we can.
Similar, obviously, first and foremost, what's the prognosis? What's the outlook? But then, my next question is, what do I need to know, right? I mean, what as a mom, what are the best things that I can do to help my son? And the advice that I got from the cardiologist was really great. It's just become as educated as possible, right? Understand the medical terminology, understand what symptoms to look for, understand, this drug is a beta blocker and this drug, just becoming as familiar as you possibly can without a medical background, and realizing that you will need to be your child's health advocate, at least in this, initial first, 10, 12 years, as they become comfortable with it. You will need to be their voice. You will need to sometimes get loud. You will likely be fighting insurance, all of those types of things. So I really just took it upon myself to understand as much as I possibly could. So when, we're having those conversations, I understand the terminology that he's using. And now I'm doing the same with my son and helping him understand, and really having him now, take the lead and asking those questions of his cardiologist. But I like the, let's take it one step at a time, right? One journey at a time, because that's very much what this is. And we've been fortunate so far that we've had a fabulous care team, and he's doing well today, but you never know what tomorrow brings with cardiomyopathy.
Thank you, Melissa, Pragna, and Renee for joining us today and for sharing your journeys and for providing guidance on your experience raising children with cardiomyopathy. We've now reached the question and answer component of the webinar. If you have questions for our Heart Moms and have not done so already, you can type them into the Q&A box on the control panel of your screen and we'll read them aloud. Please remember to keep your questions to a general nature as our panelists cannot provide medical advice. We did receive some questions in advance of this webinar that we'll just open up to all three of the moms. Anyone can answer, whoever's comfortable with it. One of them is, did your children's heart get better over time with medication?
So I can jump in on that one. As was mentioned, Benjamin was diagnosed when he was 4 weeks old, and he was closely monitored. He remained pretty stable in terms of his ejection fraction rate. It was initially 20%. But then after about 6 months' time on medication, his heart function did show improvement. So it was, it took some time for the medicine to make changes. And then eventually his heart function, it was probably maybe a year into the journey that it returned back to a normal heart function, and that's where it stays today. But again, we recognize he's in a tough spot with puberty and adolescence. We've been told cautionary tales that sometimes you can see a change at that age because there's a lot that their bodies are going through. But that was our experience.
Thanks so much, Renee. Another question we received was, when your child was diagnosed, were there any signs of disease, or was it a surprise to be told that your child had cardiomyopathy?
I can start. So when she was born, right after birth, about 48 hours into it, I noticed, almost 24 hours into it, she wasn't nursing as well, and I could hear labored breathing. So within 48 hours, she was admitted into the NICU. That was my initial concern, was just that. But then after that, we went into a whirlwind of, basically she went into multi-organ failure pretty quickly. They were preparing us to not bring her home at that point. And all the other organs recovered except her heart. And it was due to the Coxsackie B virus at that point.
Thanks so much, Pragna. Melissa, we have a question for you that came in. How did your journey change when your child received transplant? Did it get easier or harder to understand everything? And how did you emotionally handle the change in care for your child?
Oh boy, that's a hard one. It was terrifying. Basically, just like Pragna said, they tell you, you don't know what to prepare for. So we were preparing for either getting this gift, which was unknown, or a funeral. And so, because he declined right at birth, that's when we knew straight away. So he just got worse, and they got him a little bit better in the hospital, then they got worse again. So by the time we had done a lot of research, because we had met our first transplant coordinator at 3 days old, and by the time he was at 6 months old, his ejection fracture was down to 6, and that's when we were sent out to a transplant program. We had researched a bunch of them, ran through our insurance, saw the Center of Excellence, which ones were approved. We ended up going out to Children's Medical Center in Dallas. It had high ratings. We have family out there. That's very important to keep your support network if you can. And there wasn't a transplant center in our area at the time. But if you can be close to home, of course, that's preferable. So we transitioned out there, and give yourself grace. It's a minute by minute, hour by hour situation. It's going to be painful. It's going to be difficult. You're going to get help from people you didn't know. We had our respiratory therapist coming in, checking on us every day and lifting us up. You're going to have close family members that can't handle it and don't speak to you during this whole process, because it's so shocking to them. But in that moment where you're struggling for every minute, it seems you just kind of get really sad, and you don't understand why some people that you thought were so close to you and might help can't, and others that will step in those moments. You just lean on whoever is there at the time. You will make it. Your team has done this over and over and over again. They will make sure you get through this. They will make sure that you have the help that is needed to help get you through this process. But definitely have grace with yourself, your family. Take things minute by minute, and at the end of the day, hopefully you'll get the call and your gift of life, and life will move on. And know that that first year is going to be difficult, but once you get past the first year, it gets easier the second and the third and the fourth, until they get to transition and you have to let them go be on their own. And then you hope that you did your job as a mom, and they hear you in their head. So that's the hope. And I guess that's my best advice for transplant.
Thanks so much, Melissa. Well, we have reached the end of today's session. Thank you all for participating in this special edition Mother's Day webinar. I wanted to again extend our thanks to our Heart Moms, Melissa, Pragna, and Renee, for joining us and for sharing their unique experience. We are so very grateful for your time. The recording from today's webinar will be available on our website and YouTube channel in the coming days, and will also be forwarded to attendees in a follow-up email. In the meantime, please feel free to reach out to us by email or connect with us on social media. This May, honor the unwavering strength of moms who navigate every challenge to protect their child's future by making a donation to CCF Spring Appeal. Your gift empowers mothers like Melissa, Pragna, and Renee to keep going. With your support, CCF can offer the trusted guidance and hope that families of children with cardiomyopathy so deeply need. Scan the QR code on your screen or click the link in the chat to make your donation. Please join us for our next Experts on Pediatric Cardiomyopathy webinar, Understanding Clinical Trials, What Parents Need to Know, featuring CCF's Vice Chair of Medical Advisors, Dr. Joseph Rosano from the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. This webinar is scheduled 1 week from today on Friday, May 23rd at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Register for the event by clicking the link in the chat. CCF is just 7 reviews away from earning the prestigious Great Nonprofit Top Rated 2025 award. Your feedback can help us reach this exciting milestone. If you believe in our mission, please take a moment to leave a review by clicking the link in the chat. Once again, thank you to Melissa, Pragna, and Renee for taking the time to join us today and share your stories. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.